All right, friends. Well, I really didn't want to do any more of these because I'm tired of standing in front of the TV doing this. But this guy's such an asshole. All right, so I gotta continue on here. So real quick, this is Daryl Parks, the attorney for the Brown family. Of course, he's a talking head, and he's got his script. But this guy, I mean, talk about a slimy, weaselly attorney. Just listen to this guy, and it's funny because at some point, as liberal as CNN is, they even realize, even Wolf Blitzer, who's a total asshole, right? This guy even realizes that he can't let this attorney get away with his BS. So let's listen to this crap.
Into his death. It's very sad.
Very sad indeed, and we don't know if it's connected at all, but the police clearly are ruling.
They're talking about
right
another murder that happened in Ferguson during the rioting.
We're talking about Darren Wilson, the interview he gave to ABC, in which he said he felt his life had been threatened, and he looked at his face, Michael Brown's face, obviously a big young man, 18 years old. And a lot of people have pointed to that surveillance video in the convenience store only moments earlier, and we're showing it once again to our viewers. You've seen it. Michael Brown allegedly stealing some cigars. They're walking out of the convenience store. The owner supposedly comes over to confront him, to ask him not to take the cigars, and then he gives him this angry look and just intimidates him with his strength and his size, and walks away. When you see those comparisons, when you see people making that argument, this is not necessarily such a nice guy, you say.
Well, certainly, let's differentiate what we're looking at, Wolf. When you see Michael walking out of the store, and the store owner actually approaches him, Michael doesn't approach him, the store owner approaches Michael, and then Michael turns in and makes a gesture toward him.
Right. Because the store owner, when he's ripped off, is just supposed to stand there and look stupid, right? So it's the store owner's fault for approaching Mike Brown after he's ripped him off, and allegedly that's what sparks the confrontation. This is how these freaking lawyers think. Here we go.
He doesn't hit him, right? He doesn't. I mean, it's not what we all know to be violence. Violence is taking your fist, hitting someone.
Oh, that looks like a big shove, though.
To the ground. That's not what he does in that particular video. So I think we have to differentiate the level of violence that we all know that could have taken place. That's not what happened there. He pretty much just almost as if he's intimidating, and that's it. That's not extreme violence as we know it in this country.
But he does shove the owner as he's at the door. He does engage him.
Well, let me say this here. A good differential. He engages him, and maybe he touches him, but does he put his hand on him? Does he try to hit him in the head?
Yeah, he does, as a matter of fact.
No, he does none of that. And so I think we have to draw a huge difference there.
Now here Wolf Blitzer realized he can't let him get away with this.
What we see is not any type of deadly force, not trying to cause great bodily harm to the store owner in any type of way. And I think we all have to agree with it, because that's not what we see in that video. Now, it's regrettable what Michael does in the video. We're not condoning his actions.
Take a look at this right there. You see him walking out, and he pushes the owner to the side. He actually does lay his hand on his shoulder.
He laid his hand on his shoulder, but he could have hit him in the mouth. He could have choked him.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of deadly force.
He could have done worse.
Anything that you could say.
Yeah, you're
deadly
right.
Force or something that would cause great bodily harm to that store clerk. Comparing that situation to what Officer Wilson tried to describe to us. Two totally different situations. Nothing about the store video shows that he would have ever put that store owner in any type of deadly force harm.
Oh man, this. I know my viewers are generally pretty intelligent, so I really don't need to break this down. But, I mean, if you're an idiot and you need me to explain this to you, then you really are an idiot. I mean, the stuff that this guy is saying, imagine if that little 5'4" store clerk were to have stood in that doorway and refused to let him leave until Mike Brown surrendered those cigars that he was stealing. How do you think that would have ended? I mean, what do you think? Mike Brown's going to go back, oh yeah, here's your cigars back. What this video shows, it speaks to his character, okay? And they're going to get into his criminal record. I'll touch on that briefly in a second here.
Compared to what we now know that Officer Wilson did toward Michael, where he used deadly force for the situation that happened, taking Michael's life.
And just for the record, did Michael Brown have any criminal record?
Not that we know of.
But you would know, you're the lawyer for the family, right?
Right, certainly, but our research has not shown any type of criminal record whatsoever that Michael would have had.
All right.
Other than, I mean, some school stuff, but that was it.
All right. When you say school stuff, what does that mean?
I mean, just, you know, he was a typical kid. He went to school and did kid stuff, things that kids, no type of criminal history whatsoever.
All right.
Yeah, well, that video proves that he was a criminal because he had just committed strong-arm robbery. As far as a criminal record goes, I'm going to leave this up to people who have more time to research this, because if you do a Google search for Mike Brown criminal record, you get hits for just all kinds of conflicting information. Some sites say that he was squeaky clean. Other sites say that no, he had charges. A couple of sites indicate that they heard from the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, or I'm not sure where that comes from, but that he had a second-degree murder charge with no conviction. So, you know, you can be brought up on charges for stuff, and that probably remains sealed in your record. And that's an important point here, is that his record was sealed because he was a juvenile. To this date, I don't know that that's ever been released. There was a lawsuit pending to try and get his criminal record, or his records of any sort, released. But whether that was ever done, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that this kid was squeaky clean. I mean, you just saw, you know, here he is, I think he's 17, and he's committing strong-arm robbery and having no compunction about it. So the idea that, you know, he's this gentle giant is complete bullshit. And the attorney knows it. You can just see it in his face. He doesn't want to talk about it. Typical kid stuff. Yeah, well, what does that mean? You know, beating up other people, I don't know, breaking into cars, throwing bottles at people's houses. I have no idea, but you know, this is a lawyer talking here. So let's see what else we got here.
I want to be precise on that, because there have been some out there suggesting he did have some sort of criminal record, but you're saying he didn't. Let's talk a little bit about the prosecutor, the St. Louis County prosecutor, Robert McCulloch. He says there was at least one African-American eyewitness who saw Michael Brown charging at the police officer, Darren Wilson. You've seen that testimony in the transcripts that have been released.
Yes, and let me say a few things, Wolf, about the situation. We now know a few things. Number one, we know that there was a serious tussle at the car where the officer's gun went off, and more likely than not, the injury from the gun was the injury to Michael's hand. It was right here in the fatty part of his thumb. We saw it on autopsy, and we knew about it, obviously. Also, we knew that Michael probably was wounded there, and as he left the car, he was dripping blood. And that's why we were not surprised when you heard the prosecutor say that there was blood at the car door. Well, we knew there would have been blood at the car door, but we also knew that this wound was pretty bad.
Okay, we have to stop here, because you heard all the BS from these people saying that the cop drove up and just willfully executed this guy. Here the attorney is essentially accepting and admitting that there was a struggle for the gun. Okay? He's admitting that. And the evidence shows that. Look at the inside of the door. I believe there is a bullet hole, if I'm not mistaken, in that door when the gun first went off. How does that happen? So the attorney, who's claiming that the police officer is lying about all this stuff, is accepting the fact that there was a struggle for the gun. Well, why is there a struggle for the gun? Who initiates that? Does the cop wave his gun at the kid and say, "Hey, come fight for this"? This is crazy. This is when it comes down to attorneys, they think you're really stupid and that you're gonna see right past it. So the guy admits that there was a struggle for a gun. That's really all you need to know. There's no reason for there to be a struggle for a gun unless you're being attacked.
And most of the blood that we probably saw, the trail, probably came from his hand. So as he walked away, the officer knew he had hit him because he saw blood there. And when Michael turned around and was trying to surrender,
he wasn't.
Michael was already wounded. And the officer knew that. Thus, there was clearly, even at that point, no need to use deadly force. Well, as Michael was coming around, and the officer talks about Michael putting his hand down, well, he shot. And there was testimony, and Michael said, "Hey, why are you shooting? Why are you still shooting?" Well, we know at that point that the officer describes nothing to indicate that he saw any type of weapon on Michael. And that's important because we're allowed to talk in very general terms about the threat, but it doesn't adequately describe a real threat. A real threat in terms of people who do criminal law is, do you see something that looks like a weapon? Do you see something that could be a weapon? He describes none of that. He only talks about fear that only he has for whatever reason. And so Michael's coming toward him. This officer is a trained law enforcement officer. He has the ability to take down He's just as tall as Michael, 6'4", they're both 6'4". So it's not like it's a dominant situation. But for whatever reason, he describes that he feels like a 5-year-old against Hulk Hogan. How could that be? A trained officer, you're both 6'4". Yes, there's a little bit of a weight difference, but this guy that you're confronted with is already injured from your gunfire.
Yeah, and what he fails to mention is that, he won't accept the idea that Mike Brown turned around and charged him, which the eyewitness testimony and the cops' testimony and even the blood evidence, if you've read the blood evidence, that's very conclusive, because it shows the blood trail leading away and then leading back towards the vehicle where the officer was. That indicates a charge. So, the cop wants to try and conveniently ignore all the. I'm sorry, the attorney wants to conveniently ignore all this stuff. This guy is so incompetent. If this guy was representing me, I'd fire his ass. It's so unbelievably contradictory and stupid.
He weighed about 210 pounds, the police officer. Michael Brown weighed close to 300 pounds, and that's why he says he was intimidating.
But also, too, now he's equipped with mace. He's equipped with a gun.
Now, here we go again.
Used in a manner to use to subdue Michael. He did not have to take his life, is all we're saying, Wolf. There were other options available to this officer that he could have used. For example, given the fact that we now know where Michael's head was compared to the gun, even then he could have pushed Michael down to the ground. That's how close he was to throwing him. It was no problem, especially by the fact that he knew that his hand was already injured. I mean,
are you kidding me?
That being said, this grand jury should not have been the type of instrument to weigh all of these facts. Grand juries are not designed for that. This grand jury, in essence, acted as a trial jury. That's not how our system works. This grand jury should have performed its function to only find probable cause, and then, once that was done, we should have had a public trial where we have a petty jury to weigh the evidence, all the evidence, so that it can be tested, confronted, cross-examination, and all the things that we do in a criminal trial, both in fairness to the officer, but most importantly, in fairness to the legacy of Michael Brown Jr., because we owe Michael Brown Jr. the truth, not what we've experienced.
You got the truth, all right.
This version of justice that is uncommon, and the prosecutor talks about that this is not what he normally does in a grand jury process, but for whatever reason, he chose to do it in this case, and that's why people are so upset. When young black men lose their lives, we shouldn't alter the process. We should let our judicial system do what it normally does. When our system does what it normally does, it works for everybody and is fair. When we make changes to that system, that's when problems arise like we're having here.
I wonder if this attorney ever represents, black families who've lost a relative to another, a black murderer, right? Because we all know that black on black crime is far in excess of white cop on black criminal crime. So, and then this idea that the officer can, after already using deadly force, is supposed to suddenly backpedal and then use some other type. That never happens. That is completely unrealistic. That the guy's going to shoot him. I mean, think about it. You're a cop. You just shot some huge guy who's attacked you and tried to take your gun. The guy starts to flee, and you go in pursuit, which is your obligation. The guy turns around and charges you. Are you really going to suddenly pull out a taser? This is so unrealistic. The fact that you shot a guy and he's willing to come back and tackle you indicates that he's either on some kind of drug, or he is just so hopped up on rage that nothing's going to stop him but another bullet. And the fact is, given, like the officer said, I think he was within 8 feet when he had to fire that shot. There's just no time to do that crap. I mean, this guy is so unrealistic. I think he got his... I really think the guy got his degree from a cereal box. I mean, you talk about an incompetent, stupid-ass attorney. Anyway, so there are my thoughts. And this buffoonery on CNN is just going to continue on until these whole riots peter out and some other breaking story, maybe a plane crashes or something, and then CNN can obsess on that for a while. Thanks.